The glass shattered against the wall, 2 inches from my face. I didn't flinch. Not anymore. After 15 years of living in this house, my body had learned to stay perfectly still when things got violent. But what my husband Grant didn't realize, what none of them realized, was that the moment that glass exploded beside my head, something inside me finally clicked into place. Not broke. Clicked. Like the last tumbler in a lock I'd been picking for months. I am Elena. I'm 41 years old. And I'm a certified public accountant. I say am, because that's what I'll always be. Even though for the past 15 years, my CPA license has been collecting dust while I cooked, cleaned, and wiped the backside of a woman who called me trash to my face every single day. Let me back up. I married Grant when I was 26. I'd grown up bouncing between foster homes in Michigan, never staying anywhere long enough to hang pictures on the wall. By the time I aged out of the system at 18, I had a garbage bag full of clothes and a fire in my gut that said I would never ever be disposable again. I put myself through college, graduated summa cum laude with an accounting degree, passed the CPA exam on my first try. I was working at a mid-size firm in Chicago when I met Grant at a friend's bait party. He was charming, attentive, and he had something I'd never experienced before, a family. His mother, Judith. His younger sister, Brooke. Sunday dinners, inside jokes. A refrigerator covered in family photos. I wanted in so badly I could taste it. We got married after a year of dating. Grant's mother hugged me at the wedding and whispered, "Welcome to the family, dear." Those 5 words were the most beautiful thing anyone had ever said to me. I would have done anything to keep hearing them. And I did. I did everything. Within 6 months of the wedding, I quit my job at Grant's suggestion. "Mom needs help around the house," he said. "And Brooke's going through a rough patch. Besides, we don't need 2 incomes." That was the first lie. We absolutely needed 2 incomes. But I was so desperate to be needed, so terrified of being sent away again like I'd been sent away from every foster home that I agreed. I told myself it was temporary. 15 years is a long temporary. I became the engine of that household. I cooked 3 meals a day, tailored to Judith's diabetes and high cholesterol. I drove her to every doctor's appointment, managed her medications, negotiated with her insurance company when they tried to deny her claims. I cleaned the house top to bottom. I did everyone's laundry, including Brooke's, a 32-year-old woman who had never held a job longer than 3 weeks and who lived in our basement rent-free. When Grant's contracting business started hemorrhaging money, I went back to work not at a firm, but doing freelance bookkeeping from the kitchen table at night after everyone was asleep. My income paid the mortgage, the car payments, the grocery bills. Grant's money went to his poker nights, his truck accessories, and rounds of drinks for his buddies at the sports bar. None of them ever said thank you. Not once in 15 years. Instead, what I got was this. "Elena, the chicken is dry. Elena, you forgot to pick up my prescription. Elena, why is my white blouse still wrinkled?" And from Grant, the worst cut of all, "You should be grateful. Where would you be without us? Back in some group home?" He said that to me on our 10th anniversary. We were in bed. I had just handed him a card I'd spent an hour picking out. He read it, tossed it on the nightstand, and said those words like he was stating the weather. I stayed. I know people will wonder why. People who've never had their sense of self worn down to nothing over years. Who've never been so convinced they're worthless that the idea of leaving feels like stepping off a cliff into empty air. I stayed because I believed him. I believed I had nowhere else to go. I believed that this broken, cruel version of family was still better than no family at all. That's what abuse does. It rewires your brain until the cage feels like shelter. The night everything changed, I was carrying a tray of Judith's evening medications upstairs. I'd organized them perfectly the way I always did. The metformin, the lisinopril, the baby aspirin, each in its own little cup with the dosage written on a sticky note. Judith took one look at the tray and slapped it out of my hands. "I told you I wanted my pills with ginger ale, not water. Are you deaf or just stupid?" The pill cups scattered down the hallway. I knelt to pick them up. That's when Brooke came up behind me. I don't know if she meant to push me that hard, or if she was just being careless the way she was careless about everything. But her hands hit my back and I went down the stairs. All 14 of them. I remember counting the edges as they hit my ribs, my hip, my skull. 14 steps. And then the hardwood floor at the bottom, cold and unforgiving against my cheek. I lay there. Blood was running from a gash above my left eye. My wrist was bent at an angle that made my stomach lurch. From the top of the stairs, 3 faces looked down at me. "Oh, stop being dramatic," Brooke said, already scrolling her phone. "Get up and clean this mess," Judith snapped. "There are pills everywhere." Grant just sighed. "Come on, Elena. You're making a scene." Not one of them came down to help me. I got up, slowly. I wiped the blood from my eye with the hem of my shirt, And in that moment, standing at the bottom of those stairs with a fractured wrist and blood in my eye, I felt something I hadn't felt in 15 years. Clarity, absolute crystalline clarity. I wasn't angry. That surprised me. The anger had burned itself out years ago and left behind something colder, something sharper. It was arithmetic, pure and simple. I am an accountant. Numbers don't lie, and the numbers had never been clearer. This equation would never balance. No amount of sacrifice would ever make these people love me. The variable I kept trying to solve for, belonging, was undefined. It had always been undefined, I'm sorry, I said. My voice sounded strange even to me. Flat, empty, like reading numbers off a spreadsheet. Judith smirked. Good, now get the broom. They went back to their rooms, the doors closed. And I stood alone in the dark hallway, pressing a dish towel against my bleeding forehead, and I began to calculate. What none of them knew was that I'd been quietly preparing for 6 months. Not because I'd planned to leave. Because some survival instinct buried deep in my foster kid bones had whispered to me one night, keep records, protect yourself. And I'd listened. For 6 months I had been copying every financial document in the house, every mortgage statement, every credit card bill, every medical receipt. I had a fireproof lockbox at a storage unit across town. Inside it were 15 years of records proving that I had paid for virtually everything. The mortgage, Judith's medical bills, Brooke's car insurance, Grant's credit card debt from his failed business. I had spreadsheets, color-coded spreadsheets, because that's what accountants do. Every dollar in, every dollar out, documented and cross-referenced. I had also 3 months earlier, quietly contacted a lawyer named Sandra Kessler. She was a former domestic violence prosecutor who now ran a small family law practice. I found her through a women's shelter hotline I'd called one night from the bathroom while everyone slept. Sandra had reviewed my documents and her exact words were, "Alina, you don't just have a case, you have a fortress." The morning after the stairs, I made breakfast. Eggs, bacon, toast, fresh coffee. I set the table, did the dishes, started a load of laundry. Judith watched me with a satisfied sneer. See? A little discipline goes a long way. Grant didn't look up from his phone. Brooke didn't come downstairs at all. At 9:15 a.m., I took off my apron, folded it neatly on the counter, and walked out the front door. I didn't go to the grocery store. I drove to Sandra Kessler's office and signed everything. The divorce petition, the restraining order application, the demand letter for reimbursement of separate property. Sandra's paralegal notarized the documents while I sat in a leather chair and drank a cup of coffee that someone had made for me without being asked. I almost cried at that small kindness. Then, I went to the bank. I had opened a new individual account 2 months earlier, at a completely different bank across town. That morning, I transferred every cent I had ever earned out of the joint account and into my own. It was my money. I had the pay stubs, the 1099s, the tax returns to prove it. Grant had contributed almost nothing to that account in years. Next, I went to the county recorder's office. Here's the thing about our house that Grant had conveniently forgotten. The title was in my name. When his business went under 8 years ago, the bank was going to foreclose. I refinanced the mortgage under my name, with my credit score, and I had been making every payment since. The land was his parents' originally, but the structure, the building itself, was mine on paper. I listed the house for sale that afternoon. My final stop was the post office. I mailed a certified package to an address in Edinburgh, Scotland. Inside were my credentials, my transcripts, and my application for reciprocal CPA licensing in the UK. What Grant and his family never knew, what I had kept sealed away like a secret heart, was that before I married Grant, I had spent 2 years working for an international accounting firm. I had lived in London. I spoke fluent French from a foster mother who'd immigrated from Haiti, the one good placement I'd ever had. I had a professional network that spanned 3 countries. I had buried all of it to become their maid. Not anymore. That evening, Grant came home to an empty kitchen and a manila envelope on the dining table. Inside was the divorce petition. He picked it up, read the first paragraph, and laughed. "Judith, Brooke, come look at this. Elena's lost her mind." Brooke thought it was hilarious. "She'll be back by Thursday." Judith opened the refrigerator and pointed at the rows of pre-made meals I'd left behind. "See?" She cooked ahead. "She's just throwing a tantrum." They ate the pre-made meals and went to bed without a care in the world. By day 3, the food was gone. The laundry was piling up. No one had taken out the trash, and the kitchen smelled like a dumpster. Grant called my phone 17 times. Every call went to a number that was no longer in service. I'd canceled the line and gotten a new one. On day 4, a thick envelope arrived from Sandra Kessler's office. The formal attorney's letter. All communication must go through counsel. 3 demands: sign the divorce settlement, reimburse my separate property contributions, consent to the house sale. Grant went white as a sheet, then purple with rage. "She can't sell my house." But it wasn't his house, it was mine. The title, the mortgage, the insurance, all in my name. 8 years of payments, all from my bank account. Sandra had verified every record. The next morning, 2 men in suits rang the doorbell. "We're from Caldwell Realty. We're here for the property appraisal." Grant screamed at them through the intercom, threatened to call the police, but they had a key. I had given it to them. Then the utilities went gas, the water, all under my name, all terminated as of that morning. The house went dark and cold and silent. In the blackout, Judith started to panic. "Where's my medication? I can't find anything." Elena always organized everything. Of course she did, 'cause none of you ever bothered to learn where anything was. Grant, desperate and furious, did something spectacularly stupid. He called an old college buddy who fancied himself a legal fixer. The buddy's advice: file a fraud report, go to the bank, say Elena stole Judith's care funds, get her accounts frozen, then report her as a missing person with mental health issues. That way, if she tried to fly anywhere, she'd be flagged and detained. Grant did all of it. He walked into the bank with crocodile tears and doctored documents. He told the police his wife was mentally unstable and had disappeared with thousands of dollars of his elderly mother's money. He filed for an emergency injunction to block the house sale. For one night, Grant felt like a genius. He sat in the dark house with Judith and Brooke, eating cold gas station sandwiches by candlelight, and told them, by tomorrow she'll be broke, hunted, and begging to come home. He was wrong about all of it. In a quiet hotel room downtown, I stared at my laptop screen. Account frozen. The words glowed red. My chest tightened. The application fee for my UK work visa was due by midnight, and I couldn't access a single dollar. Sandra called. Her voice was controlled but urgent. Grant filed a false police report. He told them you embezzled Judith's care funds. Your accounts are frozen and there's a missing persons alert with a mental health flag. I sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were shaking. Outside, rain streaked down the window. For about 30 seconds, I wanted to give up. 15 years of endurance, 6 months of planning, and this man was still finding ways to cage me. Maybe he was right. Maybe I really couldn't survive without them. Then Sandra said something that changed everything. Elena, breathe. He just handed us the entire case on a silver platter. What do you mean? He filed a false report. That's a felony. And you, my dear organized accountant, have 15 years of notarized financial records proving that every cent of Judith's expenses came out of pocket, not hers. When I show this to the bank tomorrow morning, they won't just unfreeze your accounts. They'll refer Grant for criminal prosecution. She was right. Every receipt, every canceled check, every insurance claim. I had it all. 15 years of meticulous records, the accountant in me, unable to let a single number go untracked, had become an unbreakable wall of evidence. Your flight is the day after tomorrow? Sandra asked. Yes, you'll make it. I promise. The next morning at 8 a.m., Sandra walked into the bank with a 3-inch binder of notarized documents. By 8:07, my accounts were unfrozen. By 9:15, the bank had referred Grant's fraud report to the district attorney's office. By 10 a.m., I had paid my visa fee with 36 minutes to spare. Meanwhile, Grant was at the hospital with Judith. She'd missed her blood pressure medication for 3 days, because no one in that house knew what pills she took, what doses, or even the name of her doctor. Grant stood at the registration desk, unable to answer a single question. Does she have any drug allergies? I don't think so. What medications is she currently taking? Blood pressure stuff. I don't know the names. My wife used to handle all that. The nurse looked at him the way you look at someone who just told you they don't know their own mother's birthday. Then the doctor, an older man who had treated Judith for a decade, called Grant into his office. He opened a thick folder. Inside were years of notes, all in my handwriting. Every midnight emergency room visit, every ambulance ride at 3 a.m., every medication adjustment, every insurance appeal I'd filed on Judith's behalf. There were 47 late-night emergency transports documented over 10 years. 47 times I had ridden in an ambulance with his mother, alone, in the middle of the night, then gone straight to work the next morning without saying a word to anyone. The person who kept your mother alive, the doctor said quietly, was your wife, and you drove her out of your home by force. Grant couldn't speak. He just stared at the folder. It got worse. The doctor showed him the billing records. Judith's pension, which they all assumed covered her medical costs, was spent entirely on her personal shopping and on Brooke's expenses. The gap, over $40,000 in uncovered treatments, specialized equipment, and home health aid fees, I had been paying out of my freelance income, silently, for years. Grant's phone rang. The bank. They informed him that my accounts had been restored, and that he was under investigation for filing a fraudulent report. Then his phone rang again. His boss. The police had come to Grant's workplace asking questions. Grant was suspended, effective immediately, pending a disciplinary review. Back at the house, the car was repossessed. The leasing company sent a tow truck. It was financed under my name, my credit. Brooke ran outside screaming, but the repo men had the paperwork. Neighbors watched from their porches as the SUV Grant drove every weekend was hoisted onto a flatbed and hauled away. Judith collapsed in the hallway that night. No electricity, no light, no medication. Grant found her on the floor, disoriented and soiled. He tried to clean her up and vomited. The smell, the helplessness, the sheer physical labor of caregiving hit him like a freight train. I did this every day, he thought. She did this every single day without complaining. He called 911 but couldn't answer the dispatcher's questions. What hospital? What conditions? What medications? He knew nothing, absolutely nothing about his own mother's medical needs. The paramedics came. They took Judith to the ER. She was stabilized. But the doctor told Grant the unpaid medical bills now exceeded $12,000, and a deposit of $2,000 was required before they could proceed with imaging. Grant didn't have $2,000. He didn't have $200. Brooke, who had stormed out earlier vowing to stay with friends, came back the same night to take her in. Word had spread about the police investigation, and every friend she had suddenly stopped answering texts. Grant's termination letter arrived by certified mail the next evening. Gross misconduct. No severance, effective immediately. In the dark, freezing house, the three of them turned on each other like animals. This is your fault. Judith screamed at Grant. You couldn't even keep one woman under control. My fault? You're the one who pushed her down the stairs. Technically, Brooke did it. And you told her to. Don't you dare blame me, Brooke shrieked. I barely touched her. They had never been a family. They were three parasites who had attached themselves to the same host. Without me, there was nothing holding them together. No love, no loyalty, just mutual dependency on a woman they'd treated like furniture. Grant, in a manic state, tore through my old belongings looking for clues. In a locked desk drawer, he found what he was dreading, a stack of his own debts. Credit card bills, a personal loan from his gambling days. Debts he thought were paid off years ago. They were, by me, in quiet monthly installments. And now that I was gone, the payments had stopped. Collection notices were already piling up. His grand counterattack plan was delusional, but predictable. He called his shady friend and tracked down my flight information. JFK to Edinburgh, tomorrow morning, I'll catch her at the gate. He drove a borrowed car to the airport at dawn. He waited at the check-in counter for hours, scanning every face, rehearsing his speech. He would cry. He would beg. He would grab my arm if he had to. 9 a.m. came and went. I never appeared. Then Sandra stepped out from behind a pillar. Cool, composed, holding a leather briefcase. Mr. Grant Holloway? Where is she? The flight's about to leave. Alina is not on that flight. We anticipated you would illegally obtain her travel information, so we left a decoy booking for you to find. Grant's face went slack. Elena departed yesterday on a different flight through a different airport, while you were busy digging your own grave at the police station. Your false report drew every officer's attention to you, which created the perfect window for her to leave undetected. No, that's impossible. She's just a foster kid who does our laundry. Sandra's expression went ice cold. Just a foster kid. That foster kid graduated summa cum laude. That foster kid passed the CPA exam on her first attempt. That foster kid worked for an international firm in London before she ever met you. She speaks 3 languages. She had job offers from firms in 4 countries. And she gave it all up because she thought your family would be hers. Grant stood there with his mouth open. No sound came out. She has already been offered a position with a financial consulting firm in Edinburgh. Her visa is approved. Her credentials are transferred. And a court in this jurisdiction has granted her a protective order that bars you from any form of contact. If you try, you will be arrested. Security escorted Grant out of the terminal. He didn't even have money for the train home. He walked for 6 hours in yesterday's clothes, his shoes wearing through, blisters bleeding on his heels. When he finally reached the house, movers were there. The court had approved the sale. New locks, no trespassing tape across the door. Everything he owned was being inventoried for the state settlement. Brooke was sitting on the curb, clutching a trash bag of clothes she'd managed to grab. What do we do now? Grant didn't answer. He didn't have an answer. The hospital called. Judith needed to be discharged. They couldn't keep her without payment. Grant would need to provide full-time care at home. But there was no home. They ended up in a 1-bedroom apartment on the rough side of town. No furniture except what they could scrounge from a donation center. Grant got a job stocking shelves at a warehouse, minimum wage, night shifts. Brooke, for the first time in her life, had to work. She got a job at a fast food restaurant and cried every single day. Judith lay on a mattress on the floor, changing her diapers, managing her medications, cooking her special meals. All of it fell on Grant and Brooke. They fought about it constantly. It's your turn. I did it last night. I can't. I have work. The same selfish back and forth, day after day. Grant lay awake at night, staring at the water-stained ceiling, doing the arithmetic he should have done 15 years ago. 47 midnight ambulance rides. 15 years of managing diabetes and blood pressure and insurance claims. 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. For a woman who called her trash, the math was staggering. The sheer volume of labor I had performed, silently, without recognition, without a single thank you, was almost incomprehensible to him now that he had to do even a fraction of it himself. 6 months later, Grant got an email from Sandra Kessler. The divorce was final. Attached was a single link, forwarded at my request. He opened it with trembling hands. It was a feature article from a Scottish financial magazine. The photo showed a woman standing in front of a stone building in Edinburgh, autumn leaves scattered on the cobblestones behind her. She was wearing a tailored navy blazer. Her hair was different, shorter, lighter. She was smiling. I was smiling. The article described how a new American consultant had joined one of Edinburgh's fastest-growing financial advisory firms. How she was already making a name for herself helping small businesses restructure their books. How colleagues described her as brilliant, warm, and tireless. The last quote in the article was mine. The journalist had asked me why I'd moved to Scotland. I spent a long time building someone else's life, I said. I woke up one morning and realized I'd never built my own, so I did. Grant stared at the photo for a long time. In it, I was standing next to colleagues who were looking at me with something he and his family had never once offered: respect. He closed his phone. In the next room, Judith was calling for someone to bring her medication. Brooke was slamming dishes in the sink. The apartment smelled like burnt toast and cheap detergent. This was their life now. Not because I had taken anything from them. I had only taken back what was mine. They were simply living, for the first time, at the level of their own effort. And it was crushing them. Meanwhile, in Edinburgh, I woke up this morning to the sound of church bells. I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window. The city was gray and beautiful, the way old things are beautiful, and the radiator was warm against my back. My phone buzzed. A message from a colleague. Morning, Elena. Ready for the Henderson meeting today? You're going to crush it. I typed back a smiley face and took another sip of tea. Outside, a light rain was falling. It reminded me of the rain that had beaten against my hotel window the night Grant froze my accounts. The night I almost gave up. I didn't give up. And now I was here. Not because someone rescued me. Not because I got lucky. Because for 15 years, even while they were breaking me down, the accountant in me kept counting, kept documenting, kept filing everything in its proper place. My survival instinct, the one forged in foster homes and group houses, the one that taught me to always have an exit strategy even when I didn't think I'd ever use it, that instinct saved my life. I set down my tea and got ready for work. In the mirror, I saw a woman I hadn't seen in a very long time, not a maid, not a punching bag, not a foster kid with nowhere to go, just Elena, 41 years old, CPA, fluent in 3 languages, building a life that was entirely, completely, beautifully her own. And for the first time in 15 years, I didn't have to apologize for it.